Welcome to Fargo, the city of frost and fire. You're going to learn all about this north of normal metro, one person at a time. This is the Fargo 5. We are here. This is an exciting show for me, actually. I said I was going to crawl through glass if I had to just to get to this interview. Rich Early, the owner of Paradox Comics, is here with us today. Hello, Rich.
That's one of the best build-ups I've ever had. Nobody's crawled through glass for me before.
Well, Rich, I've known you. So when you walked in the studio, I said, nice to see you again, because I've known you maybe 30 years. I used to go to Paradox Comics, and I would give you guys my first job when I was 15. I was making like $500 a month waiting tables, and I gave you all my money for Magic the Gathering cards. So
when I was 14, my first job was babysitting, and I gave Lantern Comics all my money for X-Men back issues.
So it's been a cycle. Yeah, it's been a cycle. So I want to know all about, how did you become the owner of Paradox Comics? When did that happen?
Oh, it was easy. I dropped out of college when I was 23 and opened my own comic book store. Doesn't everybody do something like that?
Well, and so you were 23. You were telling me now you're in your 50s. So this was like 30 years ago?
31 years. Yep. Last year was our 30th anniversary.
So this was like the early 90s?
1993. Yeah, we opened June 14th, 1993. And that's what happened. You know, I graduated in Fargo North in 88. I struggled along at MSUM for about 5 years. And a lot of it was undiagnosed mental health issues, things like that. But specifically, you know, I'm blind in my left eye. And so I would just, at that age, I was not ready to ask for the help that I needed and things like that. So school was a huge struggle. But the one thing that was always there for me was my friendships that I made through the comic community in town, and then buying and eventually selling comics. So I did a convention called Valleycon where you could buy a table. I think it was like $40, and I sold comics there. It was great because my parents had bought them all for me my whole life, you know. So I didn't know anything about costs yet, and I sold a few comics, and it felt awesome, you know. And then sort of just one thing led to another.
So you're in college, it's not going well for you, and so you just say, I'm going to get this table at Valleycon? Like, you just wake up that day? I mean, what's that? How did that even start? You had heard about it, or you had a bunch of comics on hand? You had to buy them to sell them?
Right.
Like, what was how was the first baby steps into that?
Right. I mean, so as early as 81, I was a comic shop rat. The Lantern Comics was in downtown Fargo. Comic Junction, they hopped around a couple of times, ended up over in Moorhead. They started in their own garage, and then where they were in West Acres, and they moved over to Moorhead, where a lot of people knew them for a long time. So, I mean, every week, every Friday, it was go get your comics, wait all week, read your comics. The good story, I used to take my hot lunch money, which was like $1.10 or $1.15, and instead I would buy a peanut butter sandwich, milk, and a chocolate chip cookie, and it was like 60 cents. So I'd net like 50 cents every day of the week.
Now that's entrepreneurship right there.
Yep, and then spend it on comics. This is true. This is from like 9th grade to 12th grade. I would do this. So, yeah, I mean, no kidding. My parents funded my comic collection at the time. But then, you know, when I turned 18, I mean, you got to understand the thing that people maybe think of, and they think of it maybe as a cliche in their head, but in reality, there's just a community that surrounds the comic shop and now the game shop also.
Yes.
And that existed then. So I made friends with the employees. I went there, I mean, almost every day. I became social friends with them. We would, you know, go out to dinner, go to movies, have barbecues. My eventual original partner, that's how we met, you know, was all through that. So, and I mean, it just, yeah, I mean, you're right. You know, why did I get that first table? I can't tell you. I don't know why I did
Were you selling the comics that you already had, or did you buy inventory just for that?
No, selling the comics I already had. I had a nice collection from the time that I was 10-ish on and had never touched it, and so on and so forth. So in the 80s, there were a lot of great comics that came out, whether it was Frank Miller's Daredevil or Alan Moore's Watchmen, or, you know, and I was a kid buying all that stuff off the shelf. Funny thing I always say is we had no idea that those were special. You know, I'm like 14, so I just thought they were just comics.
Yeah, just pretty pictures. Clue, right? Pretty pictures, cool.
Yep.
Cool
so
pictures.
Later I figured out, oh, those were really good. So, but in the early 90s, speculation kind of started in about 1991. There was a huge boom and eventual collapse in the market, but I was buying comics. There was a point where I started buying like 5 copies of a new issue that I thought was going to be hot because I had done that first show, and I could go do more shows, and I would buy a $2.50 Star Wars Dark Empire #1 is a great example. I bought 5 copies. I turned some of those copies into $50 that I paid $2.50 for, and it was just a great feeling. If you're struggling and you're not succeeding, and then you get this one thing and you feel good doing it, it's a drug.
Yeah.
And once you've got that drug in your system, you don't want to stop, and it just propels you.
So you had your collection at home. It was all in boxes, or what? Like, I'm trying to imagine that first day at Valleycon. You're just dragging totes and totes and totes.
Yeah, it was
like,
terrible.
what does that look like? Walking in there and setting up like out of totes, or what were you doing? Grabbing it off your
comic
shelf?
boxes, the good old white long comic boxes.
Comics have their own. I did not know this.
Yep.
So comics have their own like specific box.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're
Okay.
they're
For
about
moving them around.
30 inches long.
Okay.
You put bags and backers on your. So this was a terrible situation in retrospect. Nothing was priced. Nothing was alphabetized. I was not in a position in my life to worry about.
Comics.
Yep, exactly.
And that was the beginning of Paradox.
Yeah.
So you put it out there. Did you have the name Paradox Comics at that time?
No. That was me personally. Then I kept doing shows, and I partnered up with a guy who was a sports card guy, and because we thought it'd be cool to have 2 tables, we'd be big shots.
Right.
So we started traveling around. We went to Lantern would put on shows around the area. So we went to Sioux Falls for a show, Grand Forks for a show. We were out in Bismarck, and an old lady bought a set of cards and a comic from me, and she needed to write a check. And she was like, "Who do I write this to?" And we looked at each other, and we'd thought about the name Paradox, but we didn't really know we were going to open a business. So we told her to write a check to Paradox, and it was a check for $13 to a company that didn't exist. And we came back to Fargo, and like I went over to Gate City, and I'm like, I don't know, can I open it? Yeah, exactly. Well, can I open a checking account? And they're like, you got to have at least $50 to open a checking account. And I got 13. That's what I got. And I don't know if I pitched in the rest. And there you go. That was our first bank account, and that's how our name just sort of happened. So
that's amazing. And so, how long before you opened up a storefront? I mean, geez,
not very long. That was like winter '92 into '93, and we were open in June of '93 and incorporated in October of '93. So
that is crazy. And now you guys are like the destination for comics, Magic the Gathering, cards, Dungeons and Dragons. Are you a big Dungeons and Dragons guy at all yourself? Or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've done it all.
So
yes.
you are definitely
I'm not just
a user.
the president. I'm also a nerd. So
that is absolutely amazing. And now, where are you today? You guys are going to be moving. We'll be talking about that soon. You told me you just got married.
2019. Yeah, about 5 years.
Okay, 5 years ago. Well, congratulations on all of that, and that's very, very exciting to get from here to there and everywhere, and taking people's lunch money and giving it yourself, or taking your own lunch money to start your collection. So now your collection is just pretty much everything at the shop, or do you have your own special, not on the shelf collection? I imagine.
Oh, I mean, I have a few things, mostly not a lot though. We've got guys with huge collections, and I'm not really one of them. I invested my original collection in the shop, and I'm an emotional guy, so not having my original books is a little bit of a disincentive for me, to kind of reboot the collection. So I picked up a couple of cool things over the years, but
You're not just the president. You're the nerd. You're the nerd too.
Yep.
We are going to take a slight intermission, and then we will come back and talk about what you've got coming up, which is Comic Book Day. So we're going to go there. Free Comic Book Day. That is very exciting. We're going to go there, and when we come back, we'll talk about that. So don't go nowhere.